This is a video where I'm going to show how I do my webbing technique using the double-sided fusible interfacing. The trick with this technique is you need to work extremely fast for the embossing powder to stick to the fusible interfacing once you've heated it. So I've cut a piece of the fusible interfacing and I'm just going to trim that bit off because otherwise it will just end up going over the edge. So the heat gun needs to be heated for about 10 to 20 seconds, and in the meantime you also need to, something I forgot to do, undo your embossing powder and have it ready to go. As I said, the trick with this technique is we're working extremely fast, otherwise the embossing powder won't stick to the fusible interfacing. So I've got a plain piece of card, a piece of the fusible interfacing on the top, and I'm just going to put my embossing powder there. So holding the bottom, apply the heat, and as soon as it starts to melt and go lacy, you immediately dump the embossing powder on. That's the look that you should get. So now I can heat this, move that out of the way. I can heat this to set it, and then I can do the other side. One thing I've noticed is a lot of people, when they're doing embossing, they wave the heat gun around like a hairdryer. You don't need to do that. You just need to keep the heat on the embossing powder until it's melted. So you can see there, it's even disappeared more. So now we turn it round, and I'm just going to do the other side. You can see that's not stuck down yet. So I'll just heat that side, just until it starts to go lacy. Quickly, within a second or two, put your next layer of embossing powder on. And you can see that's shrinking up as the heat affects the webbing. So the more that you heat it, one, you run the risk of melting the embossing powder so much that it sinks right into the card, which is over embossing, or number two, you make all of your webbing disappear. Now that's stuck onto that card and there was no glue or embossing ink or anything like that used. Now you can also do exactly the same technique over the top of a background that you have already done. Just put that out of the way. So here's one here. So I'll just grab another little bit. And you don't need to cover the whole card. So what I'll do this time is just do a strip, and I'll just fold it back on itself. I've got my embossing powder ready to go again. The heat gun's already heated up. So I'll just start to melt that. Quickly dump it on. And then heat that again. Now this is something that you actually have very little control over, a bit like alcohol inks. So I'll just heat that little bit there, and I actually don't mind that it's created that blank bit in the middle. And it was only because the webbing wasn't stuck down in that particular area. So that's not too bad. I quite like that. It's a very textured feeling. So if you've done it on a plain piece of card like this, to get it to go like this, there's two ways you can do it. You can either paint your card first, like the second example that I showed, or you can then add paint over the top of the one that's just got the embossing. So I've got a couple of colours of paint here. I'm just going to put a little bit out, and I'm going to dry brush it on. You need very, very little paint, like not even a pea size. So I'm just using a blue and a green. And I just have a stiff hog's hair brush. I'm just going to pick up some of the green. This is quite a translucent colour actually. And don't worry too much about the paint covering up the embossing, because you can take care of that. Just turn this around, pick up a little bit more. I don't mind having the white bits showing as well. So to remove the paint from the embossing, you can see that that's dulled it down a bit. You can wipe over it gently with a baby wipe, and that will remove the wet paint from the embossing. And then with your excess paint here, what I would normally do is, in the vein of waste not, want not, just sop up the excess on a piece of watercolour paper, and this is acrylic paint. And actually the paper I'm using is watercolour paint, so it will handle the water quite well. I don't mind that, the little striations in it. Okay, so that's it. Another simple technique, but as I said, the trick is to work fast.